The hospital corridor fell silent when Dr. Rebecca Chen closed the file and whispered the words no parent should ever hear. There's nothing more we can do. Inside Suite 2847 of Manhattan's most prestigious medical center, 7-year-old Benjamin Whitmore lay motionless, eyes open but unseeing, body present but spirit somewhere unreachable. For 11 months, his father, Richard Whitmore III, had moved mountains. He'd flown in specialists from Switzerland, neurologists from Tokyo, holistic healers from India. 1,243 doctors. Each one had examined Benjamin, run their tests, proposed their theories. Autism spectrum disorder, they said. Selective mutism, childhood trauma, neurological anomaly. None of them could explain why a perfectly healthy child had simply stopped speaking, stopped playing, stopped responding to his own name. Richard had spent $42 million chasing a miracle. But money, the thing that had solved every problem in his life, couldn't buy this one. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the city lights blur through his exhaustion, his reflection a ghost of the powerful CEO he used to be. But what Richard didn't know was that 200 miles away, a worn-out delivery driver with calloused hands and a second-hand truck was about to become the answer to his impossible prayer. Ethan Moore wiped the sweat from his forehead as he loaded the last box into his delivery van. 2:47 a.m., his third shift of the day. The fluorescent lights of the warehouse parking lot buzzed overhead like tired bees, and every muscle in his body screamed for rest. But rest was a luxury single fathers couldn't afford. "Daddy," the small voice, came from the passenger seat, where 6-year-old Lily sat surrounded by coloring books and a half-eaten peanut butter sandwich. "Yeah, sweetheart? Are we going home soon?" Ethan's heart cracked a little more. Home was a 1-bedroom apartment with peeling wallpaper and a radiator that only worked on Tuesdays. Lily slept on the couch most nights because he couldn't afford anything bigger. She'd been with him to 17 deliveries today, doing her homework in parking lots, eating dinner from gas station vending machines. Soon, baby. Just a few more stops. He'd been doing this for 3 years, ever since his wife Sarah died in car accident, leaving him with a mortgage he couldn't pay, medical bills that never stopped coming, and a little girl who still asked why mommy wasn't coming home. Ethan climbed into the driver's seat, his hands shaking from caffeine and exhaustion. The next address glowed on his phone screen: Whitmore Estate Private Residence, urgent medical delivery. He'd delivered there twice before: medicine packages, medical equipment. Whatever was in those boxes, someone needed it desperately. What he didn't know was that this delivery would change everything, because sometimes the most broken people are the only ones who can fix what medicine cannot reach. The Whitmore Estate. Gates opened slowly, like jaws welcoming him into another world. Ethan had grown up in trailer parks and government housing. Places like this only existed in movies to him. As he pulled up the circular driveway, Lily pressed her nose against the window. "Daddy, it looks like a castle." "Yeah, princess, some people live in castles." "Do they have little girls?" Something in her voice made him pause, that loneliness that no amount of love could fill. Lily needed friends, needed stability, needed a mother, and he was failing her every single day. The front door opened before he could knock, and a woman in business attire appeared. Eyes red-rimmed, face drawn with worry. "You're the delivery?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am, medical supplies for—" "Come in, quickly." She grabbed the boxes from his hands with an urgency that made his spine straighten. This wasn't just another delivery. "Is everything okay?" he asked. The woman, Mrs. Patricia, he'd learn later, looked at him with eyes that held 11 months of desperation. "We're out of options," she whispered. "Every doctor, every specialist, they've all given up." And then Lily, who had followed him inside despite his gesture to stay in the van, spoke in that fearless way only children possess. "Who's sick, Mrs.?" Patricia's expression crumbled. "Mr. Whitmore's son, Benjamin. He's been locked inside himself for almost a year. No one can reach him." Ethan felt something shift in his chest, that recognition one broken soul has for another. "Can I see him?" The words left his mouth before his brain could stop them. And in that moment, two fathers, one in a delivery uniform, one in a $1,000 suit, were about to discover that healing doesn't come from diplomas or bank accounts. It comes from understanding the language of loss. Richard Whitmore heard voices downstairs. Another delivery person, probably. More medications that wouldn't work. More equipment that would gather dust. He couldn't bring himself to go down anymore. Couldn't face another stranger's pitying eyes. But then he heard something he hadn't heard in weeks. Footsteps on the stairs, coming toward Benjamin's room, and a child's voice, bright, curious, alive. "Daddy, why is there a boy just sitting there?" Richard moved to the doorway of his study, ready to intervene, to protect his son from more well-meaning strangers who'd gawk and whisper. But what he saw stopped him cold. A man in a faded delivery uniform stood in Benjamin's doorway, and beside him, a little girl with tangled brown hair and shoes held together with duct tape. The delivery driver wasn't looking at Benjamin with clinical detachment or uncomfortable pity. He was looking at him with recognition. "Benjamin," Ethan said softly, crouching down to eye level, even though the boy wouldn't meet his gaze. "That's a strong name. I knew someone named Benjamin once. He was brave, too." Richard started to speak, to explain that talking to Benjamin was pointless, that everyone had tried, but something made him stop. The delivery driver sat down on the floor, cross-legged like he had all the time in the world, like he wasn't exhausted, like those 3 jobs and single fatherhood and crushing poverty weren't written in every line of his face. "You know what's weird?" Ethan continued, his voice steady and low. "Sometimes the world gets really loud, so loud that it hurts, and the only way to make it stop is to go somewhere quiet inside yourself. Somewhere safe." Richard's breath caught. 11 months of specialists and not one had described it that way. "I used to do that," Ethan said, "after my wife died. I'd be at work or at the store and suddenly everything was too bright, too loud, too much. And I'd just go away for a while. Inside my head where it was safe." Lily had moved closer to Benjamin now, studying him with the fearless curiosity of children who haven't learned to be afraid of difference. "Did you get lost in there?" she asked gently. "In the quiet place?" And then, for the first time in 337 days, Benjamin Whitmore's eyes moved. Not much, just a flicker, a slight shift in focus from the wall to the little girl crouching beside him. Richard's hand flew to his mouth, stifling a sound that was half gasp, half sob. "Lily sees you," Ethan whispered, and there was something in his voice, some deep well of understanding that came from his own darkness. "She knows what it's like to lose someone, to have the world feel too big and scary. Don't you, sweetheart?" Lily nodded and tears welled in her eyes with that raw honesty only children possess. "My mommy died," she said simply, "and sometimes I go to the quiet place too. But Daddy always comes to find me. He never leaves me there alone." Benjamin's fingers twitched. Mrs. Patricia had appeared in the hallway now, standing beside Richard, both of them frozen in disbelief. "Would you like me to stay with you?" Lily asked Benjamin. "Just for a little while? In the quiet place? So you're not alone?" And then, impossible, miraculous, unexplainable, Benjamin's hand moved across the carpet inch by inch, until his fingers touched Lily's. The medical team called it breakthrough. Dr. Chen, summoned back to the estate at midnight, ran her tests with shaking hands. "Neurological response," she said. "Trauma-informed connection. Recognition response to shared experience." But Ethan knew what it really was. It was one broken soul recognizing another. It was the language people spoke when medicine and money ran out. The language of survival, of loss, of understanding what it meant to choose between feeling everything and feeling nothing at all. "Richard?" Whitmore watched from the doorway as this delivery driver, this stranger with holes in his shoes and exhaustion, carved into his face, did what Lan 243 doctors could not. He brought his son back. "How did you know?" Richard asked, his voice cracking. "How did you know what to say?" Ethan looked up, and Richard saw it then. The same haunting in this man's eyes that he'd seen in his own mirror for 11 months. "Because I've been there," Ethan said quietly. "After Sarah died, I spent 6 months in that quiet place. Lily's voice was the only thing that could reach me. Not therapy, not medication, just her little hand in mine, reminding me I wasn't alone. But what Richard didn't know yet was that this chance encounter was about to unravel a truth more shocking than any diagnosis, and test whether a billionaire could see past wealth and status to recognize real strength. Because in 3 days, Richard's investigation would reveal something that would change everything. The delivery driver who saved his son was about to lose everything. For 72 hours, Benjamin improved. He hadn't spoken yet, but his eyes tracked movement now. He'd held Lily's hand for 20 minutes straight. He'd actually nodded when asked if he wanted water. Richard had offered Ethan money immediately. $50,000, $100,000. I name your price. Ethan had refused all of it. I didn't do this for money, he'd said, backing toward his delivery van with Lily in tow. I did it because I understand what it's like to be lost. That's not something you can pay for. But Richard Whitmore hadn't built an empire by accepting no for an answer. If money wouldn't work, he'd find another way to help this man who'd given him his son back. So he'd made a call. Just one call. To his head of security. Find out everything about Ethan Moore. Everything. What came back 3 days later made Richard's blood run cold. The file landed on his desk at 6 a.m. Richard had barely slept, spending his night sitting by Benjamin's bedside, watching his son's small victories. A glance, a touch, a moment of presence in the world. But the contents of this file made his hands shake. Ethan Moore, background investigationage, 34 current employment, 3 jobs, delivery driver, 16 hours day, weekend security guard, freelance handyman income, $43,000 year, gross, debts, $347,000, medical bills from wife's accident, $180,000, mortgage, 3 months from foreclosure, $167,000 custody. Status disputed. The last line made Richard's stomach drop. He flipped to the next page. And there she was, a woman named Carol Reynolds. Sarah's mother, Lily's grandmother, active custody petition filed March 15th grounds. Father cannot provide stable living environment. Child observed living in vehicle, missing school, inadequate nutrition and supervision. Petition requests full custody with father limited to supervised visitation only. Court date, October 20th, 1 week away. Richard read through the depositions, the social worker reports, the photographs. Lily sleeping in the delivery van. Lily eating gas station food for dinner. Lily doing homework in parking lots at 11 p.m. Every word was true. Every image was accurate, but none of them showed what Richard had seen. The love in Ethan's eyes when he looked at his daughter. The way he kissed her forehead every time they got in the van. How he'd apologized to her a dozen times for their life. And how she'd always said, "It's okay. Daddy, we have each other." But here was the terrible truth that made Richard's next decision the hardest of his life. Carol Reynolds wasn't wrong. A little girl living in a delivery van. Eating vending machine dinners, missing school. That wasn't okay. That was neglect by definition. Even if it came from love and desperation rather than malice, Lily deserved stability, safety, a real home. But Richard had also seen what no social worker's camera could capture. The moment when Lily's brokenness spoke to Benjamin's brokenness and created a bridge that billions couldn't. She had saved his son, and now her father was about to lose her. Richard made a decision that would either be seen as charitable or predatory. He picked up the phone. "Mr. Moore, this is Richard Whitmore. I need to speak with you immediately. It's about Lily." The pause on the other end was filled with the kind of fear only single parents know. The fear that comes when powerful people take an interest in your child. "What about Lily?" Ethan's voice was careful, guarded. "I know about the custody case. I know about the debts. I know that you're about to lose your daughter in 7 days." Silence. Then barely a whisper. "Did you investigate me?" "Yes." Jesus Christ, Ethan's breathing was ragged now. "What do you want?" "If you're trying to take her from me, I want to help you. I don't want your charity." "It's not charity, Mr. Moore. My son responded to your daughter. To you. For the first time in 11 months, he's present. He's here. And I believe that continued contact with Lily, with you, could be the key to his full recovery." The silence stretched so long Richard thought the line had dropped. "What are you saying?" Richard took a breath. What he was about to propose would either save both families or destroy them. "I'm saying I want to hire you, not as a delivery driver, as Benjamin's companion, his friend, whatever title makes sense. A position that pays $180,000 per year, includes full housing on the estate, and provides Lily with everything she needs. School, stability, security. You want to buy me? I want to save you. There's a difference, is there?" Ethan's voice was sharp now, cutting. "You want me and my daughter to move into your mansion, be available whenever your son needs us, live off your generosity. That's not salvation, Mr. Whitmore, that's a different kind of cage, but..." What neither man knew was that this conversation was being overheard, and the person listening would soon reveal a truth that would shatter everything Richard thought he understood about power, class, and who truly needed saving. Carol Reynolds sat in her lawyer's office, listening to her attorney outline the final strategy for the custody hearing. 6 days away now. They had everything: photographic evidence, testimony from Lily's teacher about missed school days, documentation of Ethan's impossible work schedule. "We'll have custody transferred within the week," her lawyer assured her. "Your granddaughter will finally have the stable home she deserves." Carol nodded, but something gnawed at her. She'd convinced herself this was about Lily's welfare, and it was, partly. But the other part, the part she didn't say out loud, was about Sarah. Her daughter had died because of Ethan. Not literally, the drunk driver who ran the red light had done that. But Carol blamed him anyway. Blamed him for not being in the car that night, for surviving when Sarah didn't, for being the one who got to raise Sarah's child when Sarah never would. Grief needed someone to blame. Ethan was there. But when Carol received an anonymous email that afternoon with security footage from the Whitmore estate, something inside her cracked. She watched a man she'd demonized for 3 years sit on the floor with a traumatized child. Watched him speak with such gentleness, such understanding. Watched her granddaughter, her precious Lily, create a miracle through simple presence and shared pain. And then she watched the conversation on the front steps 2 days later. Ethan Moore, exhausted and proud, refusing a billionaire's money. "I didn't do this for money. I did it because I understand what it's like to be lost." Carol played it 3 times. Then she did something she hadn't done in 3 years. She cried for Ethan. Meanwhile, Richard's offer hung in the air like smoke. Ethan had asked for time to think, time he didn't have with the court date looming and the foreclosure notice taped to his apartment door. But it was Lily who made the decision. "Daddy?" she asked that night as they ate microwaved mac and cheese on the floor of their apartment. "Why did you say no to the castle man?" "Because..." Ethan struggled for words. "Because accepting help like that means we owe him something. And I don't want us to owe anyone anything. But Benjamin needs me." The simple statement hit Ethan like a truck. His 6-year-old daughter, who'd lost her mother, lived in poverty, ate gas station food, and slept on a couch. She was thinking about someone else's need. He's lost in the quiet place. "Daddy, just like you were after Mommy died. Just like I am sometimes. And I can find him there. I know the way back." Ethan pulled her close, breathing in the strawberry scent of her discount shampoo, feeling her small heartbeat against his chest. "You want to help him? I want us to help him. Together." 2 days before the custody hearing, Ethan called Richard Whitmore. "I'll take the job. But with conditions. Name them. First, Lily and I keep our own space. An apartment, a cottage, something separate. We don't live in your house. Second, this is temporary, 1 year maximum. We help Benjamin, and then we go back to our own life. Third, you pay off my debts directly, not through my salary. I won't have anyone saying I took this job for money." Richard was quiet for a long moment. "You're negotiating from a position of weakness, Mr. Moore. You have no leverage here. The court date is in 48 hours. I know. But my daughter is watching how I handle this, and I need her to learn that even when you're desperate, you don't surrender who you are, and in that moment, Richard Whitmore learned something that 11 months of suffering hadn't taught him, that real wealth wasn't measured in bank accounts. "Deal," Richard said. "All of it. But I have one condition of my own." "What?" "You let me attend the custody hearing. "And you let me testify." The courtroom was cold, sterile, designed for judgment rather than mercy. Ethan sat at the defendant's table, wearing his only suit, bought secondhand 5 years ago for Sarah's funeral, now slightly too big because he'd lost 20 pounds he couldn't afford to lose. Carol Reynolds sat across the aisle, not meeting his eyes. Her attorney was midway through demonstrating Ethan's inadequacy as a parent when the doors opened. Richard Whitmore entered, flanked by 2 lawyers and carrying a folder that seemed to glow with importance. The judge looked up, startled, recognizing one of the city's most powerful men immediately. "Your Honor, I'm Richard Whitmore. I'm here to provide testimony regarding Mr. Moore's character and the custody of Lily Moore." The judge blinked. "This is highly irregular. Your Honor, I have evidence that directly impacts this case. Evidence of Mr. Moore's character, his capabilities as a father, and what's truly in Lily's best interest." Ethan's lawyer was frantically whispering in his ear, but Ethan couldn't hear anything over the rushing in his head. This was it, the moment where a billionaire's whim would determine his daughter's future. Richard took the stand, sworn in, and began. "Your Honor, 8 days ago, my son had been catatonic for 11 months. 1,243 doctors examined him. $42 million spent. Every specialist in the world, and not one could reach him." The courtroom was utterly silent. Then a delivery driver with 3 jobs and holes in his shoes sat on my floor and spoke to my son in a language no medical degree could teach. He understood trauma, understood loss, understood what it meant to choose between shutting down and feeling everything. And his daughter, 6 years old, living in circumstances this court would rightly call inadequate, created a miracle through pure compassion. Richard looked directly at Ethan now. Mr. Moore is not a perfect parent. He's exhausted, broke, desperate. His daughter has lived in conditions no child should endure, but she's not broken. She's not traumatized. She's not damaged. She is the most emotionally intelligent, compassionate, resilient child I've ever met. And that didn't happen by accident. But the words that came next would shock everyone in the courtroom, including Ethan himself. "Your Honor, I'm not here to defend Mr. Moore's current circumstances. I'm here to eliminate them. As of this morning, all of Mr. Moore's debts have been paid in full. He has accepted a position with my family with a salary of $180,000 annually, full benefits, and housing. The circumstances that brought this custody case to exist no longer exist," Carol Reynolds gasped. Her lawyer was on his feet objecting, but the judge waved him down. "Are you attempting to buy this case, Mr. Whitmore?" "No, Your Honor. I'm attempting to ensure that 2 children who desperately need each other aren't separated by poverty, because that's what this case is really about. Not love, not capability, but money. And that's the one problem I can actually solve." The judge took a 30-minute recess, the longest 30 minutes of Ethan's life. In the hallway, Carol Reynolds finally approached him. Up close, Ethan could see Sarah in her face, the same eyes, the same determined set of her jaw. "I didn't want this," she said quietly. "Didn't want what? To hate you, to blame you. But Sarah's gone and you're here, and every day I wake up angry that she's the one who died." Her voice cracked. "I thought if I could save Lily from the life you were giving her, it would make up for not being able to save my daughter." Ethan's eyes burned. "I think about that every day. Every single day I wonder why I wasn't in the car, why I got to live when she didn't. And the only answer I have is Lily. She's the reason. She's why I'm still here." "I saw the video," Carol whispered. "From the Whitmore estate. I saw you with that boy, and I saw Lily. Really saw her for the first time in years. And she's not broken, Ethan. She's beautiful. She's strong. She's everything Sarah would have wanted her to be." They stood there in the courthouse hallway, 2 people bound by love for the same person, finally grieving together instead of at each other. "I'm withdrawing the petition," Carol said, "but I want to be in her life, not as a threat, as her grandmother." "Sarah would have wanted that," Ethan said. "So do I." When they returned to the courtroom, the judge listened to Carol's withdrawal with visible relief. Cases like this, where love fought love, were the hardest. "Mr. Moore," the judge said, "you're a lucky man. Not because of Mr. Whitmore's intervention, though that certainly helped, but because you have a daughter who loves you enough to live in a car and call it an adventure. Don't forget that. I won't, Your Honor. Outside, Richard was waiting by his car, a black Mercedes that cost more than Ethan's lifetime earnings. Thank you, Ethan said, and the words felt insufficient for the magnitude of what had just happened. Don't thank me yet. You're about to earn every penny of that salary. Benjamin is waiting. The cottage on the Whitmore estate was small, just 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a living room. But to Lily, it was a palace. She ran from room to room, touching everything, her laughter echoing off walls that had never heard a child's joy before. Daddy, I have my own room with a real bed. Ethan stood in the doorway, overwhelmed by the simple normalcy of it. A home, stability, safety. But the real work began the next morning. Benjamin was waiting in the sunroom, still mostly silent, still mostly absent. But his eyes tracked Lily when she entered, and his fingers twitched toward her hand. Hi, Benjamin, Lily said softly, settling beside him. I'm back. Is it okay if I sit with you? The smallest nod. And so began the slow, patient work of healing. Not through medication or therapy, though those would come, but through presence. Through 2 damaged souls learning to trust the world again by trusting each other first. Ethan watched them together, and he learned something profound. Healing wasn't a transaction. It wasn't something you bought or earned or deserved. It was something you received when you finally let someone see you at your most broken, and they didn't look away. Over the weeks that followed, Benjamin began to speak, single words at first, then sentences. Lily? Stay. Play. But it was the first full sentence 6 weeks later that made Richard weep. I was scared everyone would leave, like Mom did. Benjamin's mother had died when he was 5. Car accident, just like Sarah. The quiet place wasn't autism or trauma disorder or any diagnosis the doctors had given. It was grief, and the only people who could reach him were the ones who spoke its language. 3 months later, on a Sunday afternoon, Lily and Benjamin were building a fort in the garden. Real children's laughter, the kind that heals the adults. Who hear it filled the estate for the first time in years. Carol Reynolds was there too, teaching both kids how to make Sarah's famous chocolate chip cookies. Richard and Ethan sat on the patio watching. You know, Richard said quietly, I spent $42 million trying to fix my son. And what he needed was a 6-year-old girl with a second-hand doll, and a father who understood that some quiet places can only be navigated by people who've been lost there themselves. Money can't buy understanding, Ethan replied. Can't buy empathy, can't buy the kind of strength you build when life breaks you and you choose to keep going anyway. No, but it can eliminate the barriers that prevent that understanding from reaching the people who need it. Richard looked at him. That's what I'm learning from you. That real wealth isn't about having everything. It's about making sure the people who have everything that matters, courage, love, resilience, aren't destroyed by the things they lack. In the garden, Benjamin laughed, a full, clear sound of pure joy. Richard's eyes glistened. I forgot what that sounded like. So did I, Ethan said. That night, as Ethan tucked Lily into her bed, a real bed, in a real room, in a real home, she looked up at him with Sarah's eyes. Daddy? Yeah, baby? I'm glad we helped Benjamin. I'm glad we found our way out of the quiet place. Ethan kissed her forehead. Me too, princess. Me too. After she fell asleep, he stood in the doorway, watching her breathe. 1 year ago, he'd been 3 jobs deep in survival mode, watching his life crumble, terrified he'd lose the only thing that mattered. Now he had a home, had hope, had a future that looked like more than just endurance. But the real miracle wasn't the money or the house or the stability. It was the understanding that broken people don't need fixing. They need someone who knows the language of broken things. Someone who can sit with them in the quiet place and whisper, "You're not alone, I've been here too, and I can show you the way back." Sometimes the rarest medicine in the world isn't found in hospitals or laboratories. Sometimes it's found in the calloused hands of a tired father, in the compassionate heart of a 6-year-old girl, and in the simple recognition that we're all just trying to find our way back from the quiet places that tried to keep us. And maybe, just maybe, that's what it means to be human. Not to avoid being broken, but to let our broken pieces fit together and create something stronger than any one of us could build alone. This is the story of two fathers, two children, and the truth that healing happens not when we're cured, but when we're finally seen,